Free throws. Pretty boring, right? The time in a basketball game where all the insane athletic feats and jaw-dropping skill comes to a complete halt as 9 other people watch someone take a shot completely unguarded, straight on, from 15 feet away. Super fun.
Seriously, free throws are probably the best facet of my game.
But I ask you this, dear YouTube watcher.
Me?
What are you watching when someone is shooting free throws? Because I'm not really watching the free throw shooter. I'm watching for who is trying to defend the free throw shooter. Sorry, what? Who is doing what on the free throw?
I'm very confused.
Free throws are fundamentally, by design, free. They are intentionally open and uncontested. So how do you guard the unguardable? How in the world do you defend a free throw? Many ways. There are many, many ways to defend a free throw. And here is where you will learn about the dark art of free throw defense.
Turn to page 394.
A fact that is sure to disappoint every invested fan sitting behind baskets around the NBA. All those things like banging stuff together, waving arms, shaking bellies, holding up cardboard cutouts, all that stuff. It doesn't really work. For the last 10 seasons, home versus road splits on free throw percentage is basically within a point. There is no way to ever prove or believe that fans can consistently mess up a free throw shooter.
And all this was for nothing.
But in all actuality, players are the ones that can disrupt, distract, and yes, defend opponents at the free throw line. A few years ago, I wrote a story about this for ESPN.com, and the backstory behind it is the idea came from just noticing that Russell Westbrook would often pull this little move when opponents were shooting free throws. He'd stand to the shooter's immediate right or left, bending over with his hands on his knees, catching his breath, but right when they were about to release their free throw, he'd pop up into an upright position. So at a practice, I asked him about it. He looked at me with an extremely classic Westbrook glare, deadpanned, "I have no idea what you're talking about," as his answer, and blinked 1,000 miles an hour that to all schooled Westbrook interpreters, such as myself, conveyed a clear, don't you dare ask a follow-up question about this kind of message. This season, Westbrook pulled out the move on Giannis, and for the first time that I've ever seen, got caught. And yes, it is indeed against the rules. It's called disconcertion, which Google tells me means disturbing one's composure or self-possession, upsetting, discomfiting. It's actually rule number 9, section 1, point F in the NBA rulebook. During all free throw attempts, no opponent in the game shall disconcert the shooter once the ball is placed at his disposal. The rule lists other things like raising arms on the lane line, waving arms, or sudden movement in the visual field of the shooter, aka the Westbrook, talking to the shooter, or talking in a loud, disruptive manner.
Little rather freebie coming up. I see what he do. Just mouthing what he.
So yeah, this rule seems like it gets broken 30 times a game. For that story, I talked to Monty McCutcheon, a former NBA referee and one of the best ever, who is now the NBA's Vice President of Referee Development and Training. This is what he told me. You don't call the violation the first time it ever happens, unless it was super obvious. You address it, you run the game. You say, you're gonna put me in a box here to call something, and that's gonna be embarrassing for you. He also said, you have to make a judgment. If I clearly see him hitch his free throw right as you barked out, that's disconcertion. I'm giving him another free throw. You see it every game, and officials definitely let the gray area and gamesmanship around this all play out. The tactics are many. Crossing the lane at the very last moment to try to disrupt a routine, yelling out directions like I said, calling out who's boxing out the shooter. I've seen coordinated attempts like an assistant coach calling out instructions and a player quickly turning around to listen right as the shooter releases the ball. I've seen players bend over to tie a shoe right as the shooter starts to go into his motion. It all came back around early this season when I saw Josh Giddey try a fun one in the second game of the season. It was before a crucial late game free throw against Denver, and he grabbed the ball and wiped his sweat all over it with his arm right before the ref handed it to Jamal Murray. I think I saw Kentavious Caldwell-Pope actually noticing it and drying the ball off. This isn't an original though. Rajon Rondo actually pulled this one a few years ago against the Warriors, wiping his sweaty face all over the ball right before it went to Draymond Green, and the refs didn't notice at that time. Rondo told me this in that story: any way I can make anybody miss a free throw, especially in a crucial moment, I'm all for it. I mean, it works. If I don't do a thing, sometimes they might miss anyway. It just depends. I think psychologically, sometimes it works. And Rondo was maybe the Jedi Master, or would it be more Sith Lord in this case? I don't know. Of the game within the game. When he was playing for the Lakers, he was on the sideline near his team's bench and launched a towel back to a trainer right as Taj Gibson was mid-free throw. He got caught and was hit with a technical. "Bleep cost me some money," he said, "but I'll do anything to win." Some other classics. Lucas Nogueira dropping his shorts to his knees as Derek Favors stood at the line in 2017. Favors missed, of course. Kobe Bryant deploying what I like to call the cliffhanger, where you act like you're going to lose your balance on the free throw line on Kyle Korver, who's almost an 87% free throw shooter in his career, by the way. In 2013, with 15 seconds left in a one-point game, Korver missed that one. Another famous one, LeBron James touching Gilbert Arenas on the shoulder in the 2006 playoffs and saying something to him in a one-point game. Arenas missed. Which, that last one is maybe the most effective category, mind games. JJ Redick, a near 90% career free throw shooter, told me the players would often say things like, "I know you're gonna give me one here," to try to get in their head. Chris Paul would even try reverse psychology. He told me you might tell them that you know they're gonna make it. And if he misses, of course, you're gonna say that's why he missed. It's always a game within a game. Steph Curry said he'd only ever been gotten once, and it was via this tactic. And it was by his brother in a playoff game in 2019. At the time, Steph had this ridiculous playoff streak going. He hadn't missed a free throw in the fourth quarter or overtime since 2015, 81 in a row. So his brother Seth, knowing this insane fact, mentioned it to him in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Steph said he laughed it off, and he made both and winked at Seth. It took a minute, but in Game 4, Steph missed one in the fourth quarter, and his immediate reaction was to look at Seth. He told me this: "I immediately looked at him and was like, 'Oh, you got me.' And that's the only time I can think of someone messing with me, and it worked." And perhaps the most famous mind game example of all, and maybe just the most famous example of free throw defense ever anyway. June 1st, 1997, Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Bulls versus Jazz. There are 9.2 seconds left. The game is tied at 82. Dennis Rodman fouls Karl Malone on a loose ball. Malone is at the line. And Scottie Pippen casually walks by Malone, leaning in to lay 6 words onto the 1997 MVP.
So I just walked by him and said, "The mailman don't deliver on Sunday."
Epic trash talk. Malone goes into his routine, a couple of dribbles, 2 big spins of the ball up high, a quick knee bend, and he misses his first attempt. Rinse and repeat the routine. The United Center is absolutely roaring, and he misses the second. And just to complete the sequence, 7 seconds later, Michael Jordan hits a buzzer-beating jumper over Brian Russell to win Game 1. Free throw defense. Not boring at all.